Thanks for tuning in. This is Optibotimus coming with another video review. And today we're going to be taking a look at the new Hot Toys Movie Masterpiece Series 254 of Rocket Raccoon and Groot from the Guardians of the Galaxy. Now there are several different ways to get these figures, and today we'll be taking a look at the Sideshow exclusive version. But as always, I'll touch on the differences here in a little bit. But for the package, you can see really large package here. For a size comparison, here's a gallon of water. It's empty, but here's the bucket for it. So you get an idea of how big it is. You got a real cool image here, very similar to Gamora as well as Star-Lord with the G, and then you got kind of the space background, but you got Rocket and Groot here in the front looking very, very cool. As big as it is, though, you can see it's actually pretty thin, so it's not all that massive of a box. It's just pretty wide and takes up a lot of space, but you got Rocket and Groot right there. On the back here, you got the various warnings and things of that nature, as well as the Ravager logo, which I still think is pretty cool that they just stick that on there randomly. And then, as always, it is a little slip kind of cover, but this one's a little bit stiff, so sliding it up, I actually had to stand up to do that. And here on the back, you have the cast and crew responsible for making both Rocket as well as Groot and Little Groot. You can see that there were actually different people responsible for it in terms of the sculpting and things like that. So really very cool. And then you come around here, and basically it's just that open clamshell on the side here. You've got the measurement thing here, but all in all, it's just much like we got with the Star-Lord and Gamora one, where you just slide it open and then you have the clamshell right there. And obviously you can see where Groot was and where Rocket is. But for the packaging, that is about it for it. So without further ado, let's get these guys out here and see how cool they actually are. Alright guys, so here we have Groot and Rocket open up and out of their packaging. And obviously up first, as always, they do come with two separate instruction manuals, one for Groot, one for Rocket. You do want to make sure that you go over these very thoroughly, that way you know everything that the figures are capable of doing and what they also can't do. These figures are expensive, and there's no sense in risking damaging these just because you didn't read the instructions. Now, as I said, there's a multiple of different ways that you can get these figures. If you wanted just Rocket or Groot by themselves, they are available individually. They are lacking a lot of the accessories, but you still can get them. For example, if you buy Groot just by himself, all you get is the figure, the stand, the two pairs of hands that are currently on him, which I'll highlight here a little bit, but they have little bendy wires, and then you also get his hand that's kind of glowing, replicating him lighting things up. That's all you get with it. Rocket, you get a little bit more. You get all the hands, you get the gun, you get the display stand. Again, I'll touch on that all in a little bit, but ultimately the best way to get these figures is as a set. If you buy Rocket by himself, he's $160. If you buy Groot, he's $200. Or you can just buy the set, which is $360. So it makes sense to buy both of them together. I mean, they kind of go hand in hand anyhow. But if you buy it as a set, you get all of this, plus this little guy, these two clenched, kind of angry looking hands, and then you also do get an angry portrait for Groot. So obviously buying the set, you get more stuff. Also, you do get an extra set of wrist pegs, which is pretty common, but the best place to get this from is Sideshow Collectibles, which offers an exclusive little Groot that has his arms down by his side. Now, this may not matter to you, but ultimately you're paying the same price as if you would get it from some place like Big Bad Toy Store, and you get a little extra piece. So these are cool little things to have. Now, honestly, I probably would have liked it if it was just a stick, not with the actual head or anything. Just, I mean, straight up just a stick. That would be cool. So you do get a fair amount of stuff, but it's much better and much more of a value if you get the 2-pack. And obviously, getting it from Sideshow, you get one extra little piece, but it's kind of all personal preference. Now, starting off with Rocket, as I said, just by itself, this is what you get. As you can see, he comes with both a right and left, a kind of angled foot. This is a little bit better if you want to try to perch him on Groot or something like that. It's one of the display options, and I'll kind of show that off here in a little bit, but real great detail. I really love how the actual feet, have this really nice amount of detail on here, and I'm trying to get in as close as possible, but they're so tiny that you can see it's kind of hard to focus on it, but you can see some really nice paint detail on there. You got some nice sculpting in terms of the actual fur, and then obviously you come down, and I love how his toes are all individual. I mean, that's a really nice touch on there. Then when you take a look at the pin, which is actually attached to it, this just moves forward and back. You can peg it in, and then obviously you can get it
rotating side to side. But I do like how on such small pieces like this, and obviously his hands, the pin to attach it to the actual either ankle or wrist is automatically put on there. I think that's a great touch.
In addition to that, he does come with both a right and left fisted hand. Again, real great amount of detail on there, very similar to what we got with the feet. Great sculpting on there, great paint.
And then you get a both right and left hand that you can see is sculpted in a gun holding pose. You can see this right hand here is a little bit more sculpted to actually hold his gun handle, whereas this one is more designed to kind of hold the barrel end of his gun or something like that. But again, same paint detail coming through here. I really like you can actually see the nails and things on there. I mean, it's really great amount of detail on these. For such small pieces, they really did a great job of kind of grabbing those minute little details.
Then obviously one of his bigger accessories is his gun. Now some people talked about how you can't sling his arm in there. You actually can. The thing is though, you won't have him actually holding his handle. You kind of have to put it in there like that and then go past where the handle is to get it around like so. I don't think it looks all that bad, especially since this section right here kind of covers up where his hand is going to be. I mean, you can see it kind of comes out there, but you can kind of do it like that where it looks like his hand is actually still holding something. But this gun is really quite impressive as well. Real great detail on here, great amount of paint and wear actually put into this piece as well.
I mean, you can see some real nice scorch marks right through there. You got the wear pattern. You come around here to the top. I really like this amount of the blue that's kind of faded in there. You got the little 4 barrels right on the inside there. I mean, real great, very metallic look on there, and it's all plastic, so really very spectacular in terms of the implementation of the actual paint detail. It's really quite impressive, like I said. I mean, you got the handle right there, and you can see that it's a smaller handle, so it does make it a little bit harder to hold it.
Now, mostly, you know, you're just going to see people kind of going like this with it, bringing it around, or, you know, going like that or something like that. I think you can actually still get it holding pretty cool. I mean, you don't have to sling it underneath like that to hold them or to hold it. I think you can kind of get creative with some of the posing options. He does come with this display stand. I'm just going to set him right here if he'll stand. That's one of the small issues. You can see that he does have a clear pillar right here, and then you've got the adjustable little C-clamp thing that comes up and down. You got the nice padding on the inside, which grips his body very well. You got the Guardians of the Galaxy and Rocket logo right there. You got the nice surface here, kind of replicating the jail cell, very much like what we got with Star-Lord and obviously Gamora. Then you also do get this little piece. I don't think that this comes in with Rocket just by himself. I think that this is a two-piece sort of thing, but this allows you to take this piece, remove this, and then this section here will clip to the larger clear pillar that comes with Groot. And then you can take this, and this is going to be a little bit difficult to do because the post, I haven't loosened this up, but you can slide this up on here so that this now can actually attach to the longer pillar that comes with Groot, so that you can have this kind of set up where he's perched on Groot's shoulder and then he's actually still supported, which is a really cool touch. I really dig that, and that's one of those display options that really looks very cool and nicely homages the film itself. The screw actually came out here. I'm going to have to put that back in there, but you just loosen that up, and then here's the other little nut for it. You just loosen that up, and that allows you to slide it up and down. But like I said, I don't think that this necessarily comes with the one pack, because it doesn't seem like it would have much of a purpose if this is the only figure that you wanted. So I think that this is a set piece. But now coming to the figure himself, again, really very cool looking figure. Obviously you can see that he is a pretty small figure. I mean, as he should be. I mean, he's pretty tiny by comparison, but this is still a really great and well done piece. The one thing that I'm kind of disappointed about is I wish that this whole section could be removed so that you could see the kind of the bionic implants that we saw in his back. That would kind of be cool, but this entire section is non-removable, and they do tell you not to take it off. Again, that's something that's in the instructions that you do want to make sure that you pay attention to. He also does have these real whiskers sort of things on here, which some people have kind of complained about. I don't think it's really all that bad. One thing that I will say is that in getting them to go the way that you want, you almost want to use a toothpick to kind of like push them down to kind of position them, but you got that sort of real hair thing going on there, which I think is really cool. I dig the
angry look on him. I kind of wish that he came with an alternate, more open mouth, like yelling kind of head sculpt. I mean, that would have been cool. But all in all, I mean, I still think he looks really good here. I love how wicked his teeth look, and then you get some angles, and it just looks like he's smiling. Look, I'm happy, Rocket. But again, real great detail in terms of the paint and the sculpting here. You can see that they decided to sculpt the actual hair, which I don't think is a bad decision. I think it works pretty well for him. But the variation here in the paint really does help kind of sell the actual look for it. You got some nice browns and you got some whites kind of thrown in there. You got the black intersection of his ears, which looks really good. And then the suit itself obviously has brown, but you can see that it also has some wear in there, like specifically down here on his legs, on his chest and everything. It all looks really good. Then you come around here to the back, you can see that his backpack here also has some weathering put into it that just makes it look older and kind of scuffed up. He does have obviously his tail with the same kind of paint that goes through there. Tail's a little bit iffy. It just attaches via a ball joint and it doesn't stay in. I mean, it comes off very easy. I mean, it's not coming out or anything like that, but I think that the tail could have been done a little bit better, maybe a little bit more bushy, something like that. I don't know, but all in all, I mean, it's still a great looking piece. Now for his articulation, again, you do want to make sure that you go over the instructions because it covers everything very nicely. For the head, you do have a little neck joint that you can see moves up and down just like so, and then you got a upper joint here that's on a ball joint, so you get a nice range of motion with it. You get it kind of looking any real way that you want it to. You can go, you know, I mean, he's bionic, so maybe he can go backwards. You do want to be very careful with these. It does specifically say that it can damage it, so just be careful with them when you're kind of fiddling with it. And like I said, use a small thing to, I'm going to just use his hand here to kind of pull those out. You don't want to put too much pressure on them, but a little bit of flexing can actually improve the look on it. His shoulders move out about that far. It does tell you not to go much further than that, about 70 degrees or so. They do move in and out. They do kind of rotate. It does have a bit of a flex. It can move forward, can move back. Coming up here to the elbow, it moves at about 100 degrees, a little bit more than 90. So you get a nice range of motion there. The wrists do move forward and back. They also rotate. So that amount of articulation is nicely captured as well. And like I said, these are very small. So they do include the actual pins on there, which I think is a great way of actually utilizing those joints still. He does feel like he's got a waist joint, but it rotates, but it really doesn't, maybe like an ab joint right there, but it really doesn't feel like you're getting much motion with it, especially since this section is all hard plastic. So you're not going to get a lot of waist movement with them, but you come down here to the hips and those you can feel move. You can spread them out like so. Says about 90 or 70 degrees as well, so you're looking at about right there for the range of motion for his leg, and then the forward motion is about that far. You do again want to be careful when you're doing it. He does have a joint down here at his knee, and then again the ankles have the pin that moves forward and back, and they also rotate. You can just take this off if you really wanted to and then pop that in there just like so. Again, that gives kind of an angled look. It kind of looks a little bit better when you're having them perched on something. It's just personal preference, but you do have that swappability. So some good poses that you can get with this guy. Like I said, the actual tail is on a ball joint, so you get a nice range of motion there that moves up, down, left, right, can pivot a little bit. So all in all, I mean, this guy really did come out looking pretty good. Again, I think that the better value is to buy him with the whole set, just because you do get the bonus accessories. And I do think between the two, people would be more inclined to pick up Rocket just by himself. I think people just think he's a little bit cuter, I guess. But the set really is still the way to go. And now we come to Groot, and Groot's always been kind of a funny character for me when it comes to the Guardians of the Galaxy film, because everybody seems to love this guy. In the film, he is absolutely, along with Rocket, is a heavy fan favorite. But if you guys actually read the comics, Groot is actually a character that not a lot of people really, well, I don't want to say like all that much, but he's portrayed extremely different. You know the scene in the movie where he extends his arm out kind of through all the soldiers and this very like rage monster and like smashes them side to side? And like I said, very rage and hate-filled kind of action. That's kind of how Groot is all the time in the comics.
So for him to be this very peace-loving and happy-go-lucky, laid-back kind of character in the film kind of doesn't do him justice. I think he's pretty awesome in his rage, their anger-filled kind of personality. I really would have liked it a little bit more if that's the angle that they went with. But I guess having Rocket kind of have that. They didn't really need to have another character, but I still like this guy nonetheless. Now, like I said, if you get this set just by himself, you do get very little with it. You do get the figure, obviously. You also do get the display stand. It says Guardians of the Galaxy. Groot has the same prison kind of base right there. You got this thicker, clear pillar, and then the C-clamp again with the foam on the inside of it just to kind of protect the figure. That does come with them. You also do get these two hands, which I'll touch on when I go over the articulation. They're the ones with the bendy wire. And then you also do get this hand right here, which is really very cool. It has this really neat translucent effect that kind of gives it the impression of when he was releasing those little plant particles that made the whole area light up. That's kind of what this is meant to replicate, and I think they did a good job on it. And you can see some really great, I mean, that is some amazing detail. Even in there, you can see some great vine sort of detail that comes through with the green coloring and things like that. Amazing amount of detail on this. And I love how they were able to capture that very unique look of wood with this figure. So I dig that. This is a nice little accessory. But like I said, that's all you get if you order this guy just by himself. Well, also he does come with the wrist pegs, as I talked about. But if you get this in the set, whether it be just the set like you would get from Big Bad Toy Store, or if you get the Sideshow exclusive version set, both of those come with this more angry pair of hands that are in this kind of gripping sort of look. And again, it's absolutely amazing the amount of detail that they captured in there. Very, very cool. Like I said, it is plastic, but this absolutely has a very wood look to it. You can see his veins are this green kind of paint, kind of looking like actual vines. I mean, that's really incredibly well done. And then you see the detail in here with the black and the brown, very wood-like. It's absolutely amazing. In terms of the sculpting, this might be one of the best figures Hot Toys has ever done. You also do get this alternate angry, kind of screaming face sculpt. Now, this is a little bit more what I would expect a Groot to kind of look like, just always angry. But again, look at that amount of detail. It's simply unbelievable. It really is. You got some green highlights in there kind of showing off moss. Again, you got this wood paneling, really great eyes. One thing that I really do kind of wish, and it's kind of hard to see, but when you look at it, I do wish, I mean, when you look at it like this, it looks black, but it actually, I don't know how well that's going to come across because I don't have the light right there, but you can see that it's all just painted brown in there. I do wish that it was actually painted black towards the bottom where his tongue is. I mean, you can see his tongue right there, but all the way in the back section there, I'm trying to catch the light and it's not going to work all that well. But I really would have preferred if like the back of his roof area of his mouth and where the tongue meets, if that had a little bit of a black paint on there just to give it a little bit more realistic look, because as it is right, again, it's not going to come across because I just can't get the light in there, but it would have given it a little bit more of a real look. Great detail in the eyes. You got some nice brown paint in there as well. I mean, everything on there really quite impressive. You can see that on the back here, it just has a slot. It's not magnetic or anything. It just plugs in there, and I'll show that up. But you can see that even here in the back, the green moss color still carries through very nicely. So the attention to detail all the way throughout, very well done with this. And as I said, these pieces are all included if you get any version of the 2-pack set, be it just the standard or the Sideshow exclusive version. So like I talked about before, price-wise, if you buy these separately, they work out to be the same price of that 2-pack set. And if you get that 2-pack set, you get more stuff. So it just makes more sense to go with the 2-pack, get more stuff for the same price. Now, one final little accessory that you get with the 2-pack is kind of the dancing little Groot. And again, great detail on there. You can see some nice, I don't know how well that's going to come across, but some actual variation in the paint around the actual base. I mean, that's really very stunning. And then again, the same amount of detail that they put in with all their figures is put into this little teeny tiny baby Groot. I mean, absolutely stunning piece. It isn't articulated, it is put in this one pose, but you can see you got those green variations in terms of the paint with the vines going throughout there. Great black detail for his actual eyes. Again, when you come around here, you see some green paint like moss in his the hair, I guess. All really wonderfully sculpted and detailed. Even down here where like the dirt or clay is really nicely painted and sculpted as well. So if you get, again, any version of the 2-pack set, you do get this little baby Groot with them. But if you do get it through Sideshow Collectibles, you do get this version with his arms straight down to his side. It's basically the same figure. It's also all in the same scale and things like that, but this is before he started dancing. And this is a great piece to have as well. Now, honestly, I probably would have preferred, like I said, just a stick in a pot, because that's what Rocket was kind of walking around with initially. I just think that that would have been a cool little touch. Now, coming to the figure himself, as you can see, very large. This guy is much larger than the rest of the standard Hot Toy figures, and I'll bring in the rest of the Guardians to give you a scale, but the guy really is pretty massive. But the amount of detail on here is absolutely extraordinary. Again, you can see some nice green paint on there. All the different panels that really come together give it a very wood look. I mean, it's really absolutely stunning how they were able to capture it. You got the green as well, so all that comes across really nice. Even coming around here to the back, you can see all the various parts on him just looking wickedly cool. Now he's got these little tiny bits right here, you got one here, you got one here. These are very fragile. I mean, I think you're going to be okay if you move them or something. I mean, they're not flexible or anything like that, but you do want to be careful because those could get snagged on something. And I also think that putting one right here where the clip for his stand is probably a bad idea, because you gotta be very careful. You want to do it a little bit higher here so that it doesn't hit that. But this is one that I'm very concerned about in terms of longevity. But everything else really does look extraordinary. You got one of those little pieces hanging out here on the leg. Great amount of detail all the way through around. Now, one thing that I do wish that they actually did is you come around here, and I do wish, like, you got these knee sections right here. I wish that they actually continued on some of the paint, maybe put like some black, and I don't think they had to sculpt it or anything, but if they actually put a little bit paint detail, such as the browns and the blacks kind of throughout there, I think that would have hidden it a little bit better. Like I said, I don't think that you need to remold it or anything like that. I just think putting some of the paint detail like you did on the rest of the figure on these actual joints probably would have helped conceal that a little bit more. But all in all, everything else looks good, and you could have done the same thing here with the elbows, maybe even down here with the ankles, although everything hides very well. It's pretty cool how they were able to incorporate all the joints and things in the actual figure itself. Now, like I said, for his head gimmick, you just take this, it just detaches, and then it's kind of weird looking, and then you take the angry one, you put that on just like so. And I mean, it's a really easy swap, but you completely change the look of the guy, which is really cool. And then if you have these angry hands, they just peg in through the regular wrist joints right there, and you can get a real cool, dynamic, angry look for him. But I mean, and while I actually prefer that because the comic book representation, I don't know, I kind of dig that. So you do have a very easy swapping gimmick. For his articulation, again, you do really want to make sure that you go over the instructions just so you know everything that the guy is capable of doing. For the neck, you can see that he's got a ball joint here at the top section, at the upper part of his neck, so you get a nice range of motion there, but he also does have this neck joint that also does rotate. It can flex side to side, forward and back. You can get him kind of looking up about that high. You can get him looking down about that low. So you get a nice range of motion with that two joint system here for his actual neck. For the shoulders, they move all the way around. You can move it forward, back. It does go all the way around, just like so. But much like actually Rocket, they do recommend only extending his arms about 70 degrees, so about there. But again, you can then rotate this around, and you got a real good range of motion with the guy. So even though that it's only a 7-degree outward joint, it gets a lot of the poses that you need. You can see it flexes very little bit here in the shoulder, so you can move it forward and back, things of that nature. The elbows here move it about 100 degrees. It's maybe more like 90 or something like that. I mean, it is pretty straight, maybe a hair over like 93 degrees or something like that. So you do have that. It does rotate also at the elbow itself. The wrists do rotate forward and back. They move in and out just like so. And then, like I said, these hands, which do come with any variation of the Groot figure, are wired, so you can bend these and position these in any real way that you want. So if you wanted to, you could still kind of create that angry pose, you know, with his hands, you know, I mean, something like that. I mean, I'm not very good at the whole posing thing, but if you really wanted to, you could recreate that kind of look. It just would take a little bit of finagling to actually do. And now, again, when it comes to wires in fingers and things like that, or just bodies, I'm usually very worried. They tend to not last all that long. If you're keeping it in a pose where it's going to be like that, it's probably not a good idea to leave it there for a very long time. It just could damage it over time. So I do like the fact that you can have these just so that you don't have to leave those fingers in that pose. As it stands, most of the time, I'm just going to leave him like that because I'm going to have him hunched over like I had him in the beginning of the video. I think that's a fun pose. And then obviously it tells you not to bend them backwards. That could damage the whole thing. So getting these up, and you see, it's all ball jointed. So you just pop that back in there, although that's a little stiff. Let me get, there we go, pop that in. Now the waist right here, you can see moves forward and back. This whole section is also on a ball joint, so you get a nice range of motion there. Moves at about 40 or so degrees down. That's about as far as you're going to want to be able to move it, and then moves back, things like that. Now this part I absolutely love. These sections right here are separate. You can see that they're on little flexy things. They're a little bit softer of plastic as well, so you can lift that up and then you can move his legs forward. If you have any Iron Man figures, you're very familiar with these little hip pieces that flex up that allow the articulation. But I love that because, as you can see, as you move it up, that moves along with it and just keeps that illusion. You can see that underneath there you have that big ugly kind of ball joint, but when you move it up, that moves up with it, which is absolutely great. So you can do that. Moves in and out nicely, so you can get some good breakdancing poses. It does rotate at the upper part of the thigh, come around here. He does bend about 70 degrees or so here at the knee. You might not be able to rotate it all that well because the sculpting here doesn't really permit it. So all the rotation you're more than likely going to want to do up here at his hip. So if you want to bend it, you're not going to get a lot of it going on down here. But I do imagine that it could rotate there if the sculpting wasn't the way that it is, but sculpting wise, it's really good nonetheless. So I probably wouldn't want to change that at all. And then the ankles do move forward and back. They're on ball joints, so you get a nice range of motion. And again, amazing detail. I mean, even look at the bottom of the feet. I mean, that's cool. I mean, you can see the like trunk patterns underneath there. Absolutely insane how they were able to incorporate all that detail there. Like I said, this probably is one of the best sculpted figures I have ever seen from Hot Toys. Now, a lot of the figures that they do, you get some great sculpting in terms of the portrait and face, but this is an entirely sculpted piece. So that being said, my level of impression just skyrockets. And like I said, with the way that they did the pillar and having the extendable piece that can just clip onto the back, this is a real cool pose that you can actually get. Now, I am bad at posing, so this is about the best that I can do, but and if you set something like this up with the angry face and then these claws, you got a really cool action pose possible that would look great in any display. And the first size comparison, as I talked about, this guy is really large. Compared to Star-Lord and Gamora, you can see just how big he is and just how small Rocket is. But this is a great looking ensemble that really is only missing one key piece. But from what I've gathered, Drax will be coming out. So finally, we'll be able to complete our cast of the Guardians of the Galaxy. All in all, though, I really do think that this is a great set to pick up. Buying these guys separately just really doesn't make that much sense. For the same price, you can get both of the figures and more accessories, so really the sets are the best way to go. And if you're going to get one, you might as well get them both. I mean, Rocket and Groot kind of go together like peanut butter and jelly. I really do think that the star, though, of this set is Groot. Rocket's a great figure. I do have a hard time getting him to stand every now and then, but that's just because his ankles are a little bit loose. But the amount of sculpting and paint detail that is in Groot is just absolutely extraordinary. Like I said, Hot Toys does a great job capturing capturing the portraits time and time again, but that's a pretty small portion of the overall figure. You know, the body is pretty much generic and then they put clothes over it. The entire body is sculpted, and I just cannot get over how great he is. If you are a fan of Marvel, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Guardians of the Galaxy, whatever, I think that this is a great piece to have and will look terrific in any display. So if this is a figure that you're interested in picking up, all you have to do is click on the link down in the video description. You'll go to Sideshow Collectibles where you can pick these guys up and add them to your collection today. But beyond that, guys, that's about it. So once again, I want to thank you for tuning in. This has been Optibotimus, and until next time, I'll talk to you later.